All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm so glad to be talking today. It is Wednesday, the 18th day of December, just 1 week until Christmas. Not a holiday that I celebrate in particular, but I still look forward to it. It's kind of a nice time. And also all the music. I love Christmas songs. You may remember that from the old Monterey days. I always used to play a lot of Christmas songs on the radio to intro and outro my program when I did live radio. So we still have the same focus we had all those years ago, which is pushing for proposing and urging progressive solutions and trying to come up with ways to achieve those solutions, to ways to get to those. I was very critical of the Democrat Party, frequently in Monterey, probably have become even more of a harsh, caustic critic of that institution. I did certainly go on the air and tell you to vote for Barack Obama twice. I thought he was the first go-round a really good choice, and the second go-round a decent choice, right? I mean, the bloom was kind of off the rose by 2012 for me and President Obama, but I still thought he would be better by far than Romney. And at the time that the election went to Obama, the second one, I was very pleased. In the end, I can't say that it probably changed the trajectory of our country much, regardless of who had won that race. Yesterday, I called the program Grifters with a question mark, and I featured several institutional left characters, including my former boss, Joseph Guy Verghese of Our Revolution. He is I guess he's called the executive director, not the CEO. Cenk Uygur from Young Turks and some others as well. We'll continue that today. There won't be, it'll just be more folks and more groups, more at this point, media, right? Because, Young Turks is media, so this will include more media as well. And AOC makes the list as a potential grifter. I'll just show you that. Might as well just go ahead with the thumbnail that I'm using, just so you can see it a little more as I'm discussing it, because that'll be a major focus, not the entire focus or foci or whatever of the program, but a major focus. And you can see the grifters in there. I put it at an angle, but rotated it some. But the Nation, Jacobin Magazine, AOC, and Progressive Democrats of America. I think most people would consider all four of those one individual, two magazines and one institution, all would be considered part of the progressive left. And my question is, can we trust them? Should we trust them? Should we trust the professional left, I call them, in this? And unfortunately, I think the answer is no. And that's really, really destabilizing. Because we're looking, I think most of us are looking for something that we can trust, that will tell us, the truth, and also will propose solutions that are best for, that they believe are best for us, for the commonality, for everybody. And it just isn't the case. It just isn't. There's so much compromising. There's so much corruption, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, shading going on because people are putting their own interests first. I think a lot of times they don't even know it. They don't even understand exactly how they're compromised by this remarkably evil, corrupt system we live in right now, and that it's very, very tough. When I have these discussions with Arlen, I personally, I see things very differently than he does, and I just think he doesn't quite recognize. I'm sure he has very different views. I'm just giving you my take, and I've told him this too, but I think he doesn't quite recognize that the institutions he trusts, the media that he has faith in, are themselves compromised to a point where they cannot be trusted. And it's terrible. It's very, very unfortunate. It's also very understandable. And we're all looking, and I'm just trying to come up with some solutions. I think I am trustworthy. I hope I am. I entertain. One of the ways you can believe that about me is I'll talk to really anybody about anything, as long as it's respectful, as long as there's a dialogue. And hey, if you want to say my experiences, my circumstances impact on where my views, Yes, it's true. You want to tell me how your situation is different, why you have a different position on a particular issue? Let's discuss it. 240-242-5646. We will feature, as we always do, we'll lead with Israel and its atrocities, its pogroms, its ongoing genocide in Gaza. 38 more Gazans killed over the past 24 hours, I guess, as of midnight this morning. The death toll now near 45,100. And, some people might say, when they think about the way I do my program, how at least you have something you can start with, you can lead with. It's kind of a framework. The ongoing genocide, onslaught, whatever word you Nakba, the ongoing ethnic cleansing by Israel is a topic that kind of you can use to start your program. And it's not, maybe the word easy isn't the right term, but at least it gives you, a few minutes to discuss and facilitates maybe the way you structure your program. But I'll be honest, it really doesn't. It's so awful. I don't even want to go. It's usually the last segment of my program each day that I prepare for is what's happening in Israel and Gaza, what Israel's doing, what the Israeli military is doing with our support, right, with our weapons. That's the hardest thing for me to do. It's the last thing for me to do. Now, partly it's the last thing because early, especially when I'm doing my program, when I usually hope to start it at noon, some of the information doesn't get posted by, I guess, the Palestinian Ministry of Health. It doesn't get posted till late in the morning on the East Coast. So I don't always have the information. So I wait to get it because, sites like Anadolu Ajansi, the Turkish news agency, which I just showed you a headline from. Let me go back to that. I might as well, right? So when that they may not be posting until maybe 11:30 in the morning, and I go live at noon most days that I do a stream, not all days, of course. So I may wait, but it's also just so horrible. I just don't want to see it, right? I don't want to look at it. I don't want to think about how our weapons, and by the way, the president for whom I voted have made us complicit in, have made us a genocidal country. And some might say, well, America already was genocidal. Look what you did to what we did to the indigenous peoples. Maybe slavery wasn't technically a genocide because we didn't, the enslavers didn't set out to kill slaves. By doing so, they would have obviously lost money rather than made, exorbitant profits. But it was like a genocide. They destroyed cultures and destroyed millions and millions of lives and killed millions of people. So if it wasn't a genocide, it was as evil as many as genocides have been. So you could say, well, that's the U.S.'s history. Okay, I don't feel like I have been personally tainted, besmirched by a genocide that this country, or my country, my nation has committed in any way the way I feel by this, right? By what we're doing right now to Gaza. So it's hard for me. I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I will. I'm not going to not discuss it. Not often the focus, but it's not something I'm ever going to let slide. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. There was a lot of posts I noticed this morning when I looked at yesterday's program, how many comments were in the chat. I see there's some already there. Welcome you, Ari. Remind audience to contact Capitol Hill. All right, yes, I will contact Capitol Hill. About what, though? What do you want us to contact Capitol Hill about? Actually, I will show you a email I sent to my senators at the behest of PDA, Progressive Democrats of America. I don't think, though, what I wrote them is exactly what PDA was going for, but hey, I wrote what I wanted to write, and I do thank PDA. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the program, how PDA pushed for one type of letter and how I at least sent a very different one. Is PDA, are they grifters? Are the people over there grifters? How about the folks at some of the other institutions I mentioned, the Nation, Jacobin, AOC? Well, first of all, let's just look at the definition. I talked about this yesterday a little bit, but I didn't give you the definition. So this is from Wiktionary, and they call a grifter a con man. Now, I feel like that's kind of sexist, right? I mean, can't women? There are plenty, by the way, there are plenty of women who are con artists, confidence people, people who run scams. There are plenty of women, I think, in I don't think. In one of my favorite authors, Dashiell Hammett, he has a number of women who are con artists, and they run what is often called the Badger game, which is where a woman seduces or pretends to be interested in a particular man, and then he may be married, and then someone comes and scares that married man, or some other way he's compromised, and they shake him down. So that's a woman and a man maybe together pulling a confidence trick or a confidence game. It's a swindle. A lot of times I think we would think of snake oil salespeople, right? The folks who sell those pills, right? Those supplements that have demonstrably no health benefits whatsoever. I would call them grifters, certainly. People who take money under false premises, usually deliberately, they know that the premises are false. It's a grift. So, that's what we're examining now, are the people, many on the professional left. And of course, I'm to the left of many of them, certainly economically, not on economic issues, not necessarily, or probably certainly not when it comes to many identity politics type style issues. I'm not. Are they grifters? Are they deliberately misleading you, misrepresenting you to raise money? And yeah, I think we can make that conclusion in some cases, many cases. Let's start with AOC. She was in the news yesterday. I actually discussed this because the news came out just before I went live at 1, the vote among the Democrats for ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. That was kind of, I think AOC viewed it as her meat. She's been very critical of corruption, of the influence of corporations on the representatives, on votes, and she really wanted that position, and she didn't get it. And I mentioned this yesterday. This is from Ryan Tyler Cohen on Blue Sky. I've actually confirmed my membership Blue Sky. Usually I'm at Twitter, but hey, why not use Blue Sky too? Blue, of course, represent the Democrats. It's kind of like supposedly the alternative to X. So Cohen here tweeting, Connolly defeats AOC to become ranking member of the House Oversight Committee by a vote of 131-84. Now, does that vote alone doesn't in any way, I think, demonstrate AOC as some kind of a grifter, or that the Democrat Party necessarily is either, right? I mean, it's just a vote, and the vote went to the older guy. And I'm not going to make it about, because the older white guy, right? He's the older guy, the old guy, because this was sort of styled as old versus new. Old Democrats like Connolly and other leaders versus younger ones. Jamie Raskin, who's, I believe, 61, was considered part of the vanguard going up against an older guy. I don't know who it even was that he was taking on. But in this case, I guess old beat new. Another way, and I think a perhaps more instructive way to look at it is, somebody who's just not viewed as trustworthy. One would have thought that maybe Pelosi would say, hey, AOC, it's your turn. It's your time. You went up against Trump. You went up against MAGA. You fought like a trooper for Kamala, even though we know you had your differences with her. So, hey, we're going to give you this plum, right? No. not at all. Pelosi rallied the troops, and they said, no, we don't want you, AOC. We don't care how much money you may raise, and you raise a ton. That's not relevant. We're going to stop you from what you want. We're not going to let you become the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. So the question then again is, how does this happen? What does this tell us? Well, first of all, the vote is very, very interesting to me. Again, she only got 84 votes from the Democratic caucus. And I immediately said to myself, wait a second. AOC is a very, very prominent member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. She may be the most prominent, probably is. I don't know, Bernie may or may not be. They say there's one senator who's a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. I didn't look into that to find out if that's Bernie. If it is, I guess he'd be more prominent. But certainly, AOC is one of the most prominent members, if not the most, and the most prominent in the House. So, Congressional Progressive Caucus, how many members of said caucus are there? She only got, 84 votes, I believe? Did she get every vote of the CPC? Because you would think this is a group of the most liberal, the ones who, the representatives who are most for Medicare for all, for example, who, are most likely to say, no, we don't want unlimited funding to kill Palestinians. We need to do something about that. So I went to their website because I really wasn't sure, but I thought it was more than the 84 who voted for AOC. And unfortunately, the website's a little bit unclear. They have they have what is the Progressive Caucus, and they have the about the CPC. So in what is the Progressive Caucus, they tell us there are 100 House members. 100 House members. Think about that. 100 House members, 84 votes for AOC. So 16, presumably the only people who voted for her were the CPC, and apparently 16 defected. So that, to me, that's kind of a grift. You don't vote for this very, very prominent, highly known, well-known progressive who, again, raises a ton of funds? What good are you? Now, maybe they aren't 100, because on the same website now here, they only say there's only nearly 100 progressive members. I think that's because the reason for the difference is that Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, I guess, are no longer considered part of the CPC. Well, they're voted out. They're still technically, I believe, in Congress, maybe no longer. But they corrected one of the two places where they give a number. So maybe it's 98. But regardless, most, but not all CPC members voted for AOC. So I'd say right there, that's really an interesting kind of a scam, isn't it? I mean, Pramila Jayapal, she's the spokesperson for the CPC. She's the leader. She goes out there. She talks about how they're going to be pushing back. She's got this strong group of the most progressive House members. It's the largest, by the way, caucus, I believe. I believe it's the largest Democratic caucus. They're, larger than the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm not sure if there's any that are even close. And she can't even whip them all to vote for AOC. Why would you give them money? I mean, they can't even win this election. Now, again, I'm not an AOC fan. I don't care personally. To me, this party is a dead letter. But if you put your faith, if you put your hope in some kind of enter strategy and take over the Democratic Party, shouldn't you now recognize it's not going to work? It's not going to happen? Here's what Brianna Joy Gray says. Following AOC's loss, will any of the inside strategy leftists acknowledge they were wrong all these years and that I and the force to vote adversarial left were right? Well, I did respond to that. I just said, come on, Brianna Joy Gray, come on. Be serious. Grow up. Of course they're not going to admit that. Of course they're not going to acknowledge that. Just be prayerful, because that's what AOC said when she lost the insider endorsements, right? There was an insider endorsement for members of the House committee who were members of that House committee on oversight who did not vote for her. They endorsed Jerry Connolly. And at that point, it looked pretty clear she weren't going to get it. And she said, well, let's stay prayerful. We'll hear from her in a moment. But she's raising all this money, right? AOC is the most prolific fundraiser. And she raises money on the premise that she can make a difference, that she's an insider. It's the insider game. She's the leader of the insider game. Look at all those small dollar contributions. 70% of $10 million, almost 70% of $10 million. She got nearly 10 times as much money raised as Jerry Connolly, who, by the way, is in somewhat poor health. So you got to wonder, why would you choose him to be your House committee ranking member? He's not even in the best of health. He doesn't raise nearly as much money. Well, I think you see it right there in the PAC contributions. Talked about this yesterday. AOC raising $10 million from small dollar donors. Is that a grift? She can't clearly make a change. Is she taking the money under false pretenses? You decide. I'm certainly more than a little skeptical. Let's hear what she has to say.
Party made its decision. They made it their choice, and I respect the outcome of the results. And we're moving forward. So I'm looking forward to it. And I ran the best race that I could, and I think to all of our folks at home that are watching, I just want to thank everyone so much for their support inside the caucus and outside, and I'm ready to move forward and protect our communities and fight for working people. Thank you.
All right, well, that's great. I mean, she makes a nice little speech, whatever the outcome as shown by the results. Yeah, that's what the results were, the outcome, or the outcome was the results, however you want to phrase it. But, AOC has recast herself at this point as a loyal Democrat, as ultimately, first and foremost, a partisan. And you saw that more clearly than could possibly be the case at the DNC. Couldn't be more clear than what we saw at the DNC. Not one word of criticism of the Democratic establishment. It was all Trump bad, Trump evil, Trump this, Trump that. And that's not why we elected her. That's not why Cenk Uygur and Kulinski, who, by the way, has also certainly become a grifter. But the idea behind Justice Democrats was, we're going to take on the Democratic establishment. They're not part of the elites. They're not going to sheepdog people behind bad Democrats. Their goal is going to be to simply transform that party. And it's absolutely clear that that's not what AOC has done, is not what she will do, and presumably, at this point, not what she wants to do, and certainly not what she has any ability to do. This party is not amenable to being transformed, and yet, that's what AOC keeps telling you she's going to do. And you heard it in her little speech there, in her little concession speech. Now, look, is this putting way too much stock in one election? I kind of think it is. I don't think it would have mattered. She could have become the ranking member and it wouldn't have changed a thing. But even these little victories, these little, much more, symbolic than anything else, fights, any kind of possible bragging rights are denied the left. Instead, the winner is Connolly, who, by the way, and I looked this up because he's sometimes described as liberal, and he's not the worst. He got somewhere in the neighborhood of 14, 16 Democratic caucus votes, Congressional Progressive Caucus votes, depending on how many CPC members there are at this point. He probably got somewhere around 14 of them. He's not a member of that group. He's not part of the CPC. And they still crossed over. So if you're AOC, if you're Jayapal, if you're anybody who is a defender of the Democratic Party, how can you see them as a potential champion, as a stalwart, as heroes who will fight for working people? They most clearly won't do that. They just chose the guy who takes all the PAC money to be the leader, their leader in the House Oversight Committee. Guys, it's time. We got to move in a different direction. Here's AOC. I mean, just to show you again how she's so clearly not ready. She's not going to fight for you. She's just not. Here you go. Tried my best. Sorry. Couldn't pull it through, everyone. We live to fight another day. Heart. How about the Democratic Party is not reformable? The Democratic Party is not redeemable. I've done everything possible, even after a humiliating loss to Donald Trump. They're still going with the PAC guy. It's time that we move forcibly away from this organization. How about that being your blue sky? Excuse me. So I got a little frog there. How about that being your blue sky? I don't want to say tweet. I don't know. What do you call it when you post on Blue Sky? Was there a verb? Because are you blue skying like you're tweeting? I don't know. So how about that being your blue skying? Some kind of, acknowledgement that the people who have given you their hard-earned cash with the understanding that you're going to take on the elites with a real prospect of victory. How about recognizing to them, acknowledging them that that's not working and you're going to go in a different direction? And that's my question to her. There's my blue sky underneath. Isn't it time for Plan B, AOC? And of course, she's not going to respond. But I just thought I'd throw it in there. I don't know if she's even seen it. All right, AOC is clearly part of the problem. I have said we're desperate on the left. We're desperate for people who are going to say no, both the Democrats and the Republicans. The Republicrats are the problem. I often use that term now on social media, Republicrats. And a lot of people, they just see Repub and they think I'm saying a Republic, and they think I'm saying Republicans, but I'm not. I'm saying Republicrats. And I've tried to make that clear. But I think it's funny. I think it's kind of ironic. And I keep using it, but you get it wrong. You think I'm saying the Republicans are the problem. And they are part of the problem, but the problem indeed is the Republicrats. So I think it's interesting. And people see what they read, what they want to read, and they see what they want to see. I always thought Jacobin was pretty good, right? One of the best. And, you live in hope. You live in hope that there's going to be kind of an aha moment where this one of the most left wing of all the, and I didn't look up Common Dreams, maybe I should have, but I believe Common Dreams has also gone after Jill Stein. Jill Stein was our only hope. Jill Stein was the only hope we had in the last election for any change. And, you think, well, would Jacobin get it? Here, Jacobin, you look at the dateline, October 25, there's this article there by Ben Burgess. There's no pride in a Dick Cheney endorsement, which, of course, was what Kamala took enormous pride in. It's what she campaigned on, along with Torture Dick's daughter. So you read this and you're like, yeah, of course. It should be a point of shame that Torture Dick endorsed her. But instead, she claims it as, an example of her bipartisanship, her ability to reach across the aisle. That should have been right there, not just a red flag for sure, meaning you can't go there. It should have been, a litmus test fail, right? If you take pride in, if you campaign on the endorsement of a torturer, someone who not only just, ruined many, many lives, embroiled us in a terrible war, made us all less safe, and is completely lacks any contrition, then I would say you shouldn't be president right there. But Jacobin doesn't go there. Jacobin won't say that. Jacobin frets. Ben Burgess, wrings his hands. He points out that when Jill Stein was endorsed by David Duke, she immediately repudiated that endorsement, which I never looked at that endorsement. I'm not sure, but it may be that Duke was making the point, I don't know, that for white people, Stein would be a good president. And I think she could say, yeah, for white and black people, yes, I will be a better president. But okay, she repudiated it. Somehow, though, Harris and her surrogates can justify. So what Burgess is doing is saying Stein does the right thing, whereas Harris brags about the support of one of the most consequentially vile war criminals of the 20th century. Yeah, fair enough. Although I think you might want to say 21st, right? Because, that's really kind of weird. He goes after Cheney for the 20th century when the worst things that Torturer Dick did, and he did plenty in the 20th century too, and I think the article's about more the 20th century, but the worst things that Torturer Dick did really were in the 21st century as vice president. Either way, it's a good point. It's a great piece. So wouldn't you think, I would think, that a unabashedly left-wing media outlet, journal, the Jacobin, would say, okay, we can't, we're not going to support Harris. We are going to support Stein. But no, he frets. He's not happy about it. But the reason he's not happy about it isn't that it means that Kamala Harris should not be president. It means that neither should be president, that we need to go in a different direction. It's just he's upset because, and we hear this so much on the left, okay, it's an unforced error. It's a mistake, not this proves that she shouldn't be president and we need to go in a different direction. So the real concern is this could cost Harris the election. That's not progressive. That's not left. That's just playing a game. It's just saying, okay, somebody's going to win and one of the Republicrats is going to win and one of the Republicrats is going to lose. And my Republicrat just shot herself in the foot, so I'm unhappy about it. That's grift. That's Jacobin saying, give us your money, subscribe to our magazine, because we're going to push one of the two Republicrats that we can make an argument would be less evil. But in the end, the outcome will be, regardless of which Republicrat wins, the outcome will still be horrific. To me, that's grift. That's not leading us. That's not leading in a better direction. The right response is, Harris has demonstrated repeatedly she should not be president, as has Donald Trump. Therefore, we strongly urge you to vote for Jill Stein. But they don't do it. What the hell's wrong with them? I think a lot of these groups, these small media outlets, fear irrelevance. But they're already irrelevant. They're already powerless. So I looked at The Nation because I don't want to just focus. And by the way, I like Jacobin better than most. And I thought, well, okay, The Nation may be about as, besides Jacobin may be one of the better options. Oh, before we get to, I want to get to the Nation, but I wanted to just show you one other headline from Jacobin. Jacobin operates in the premise, in this, at least in this last election, the only option available to us is the Republican, one or the other Republican. That's it. You got to either vote for Harris or you're supporting Trump. That's their premise. But again, there was a much better option available to you. They don't tell you about it. But that wasn't always their position. After Trump won in 2016, Seth Ackerman had a piece. And by the way, this was not universally adopted, this view by the Jacobin, but I wanted to just show it to you. They discuss the need to take on the Democratic Party and to even create an independent institution to challenge the Democrats. They recognize the reasons why it's very, very difficult to do that. They recognize the impediments, the institutional impediments, the political impediments. They get all of that, but they're like, you know what? We can't rely on the Democrats to fight for working people. They will not do it. So 8 years ago, in the wake of the first Trump win against a neo-lib, neocon, warmonger, they said, we got to move in a different direction. They don't do that in this race, in this election. They can't bespeak. So to me, that's a grift. That's a failure to fight for poor, struggling, working people because they feel like, I guess, they can get more subscriptions and have slightly more influence if they take on the Republicans and say, you got to beat the Republicans no matter what. The Nation's pulling kind of the same little scam, and it's so annoying. It's so frustrating. It's so angering to me. I went to the Nation and I looked, I Googled, or I did in the search engine, Google. I put in the search engine Jill Stein and Green, and I got 3-4 articles in the past year. The most recent, in other words, they didn't have one article since, the last article they had, let me put it this way, that even discussed the Green Party that I came up with. And you can see that little magnifying glass on the right side next to Jill Stein. And the one, she came up 3-4 times in a year. So the first article was, can Nevada, because again, my view, my belief, and I think it's pretty darn clear that the only hope we have to make things a little bit better going forward is through an alternative to to the Republicans. And Jill Stein was that alternative. Jill Stein, Dr. Butch Ware, they were that alternative. Dr. Stein, Dr. Ware, calling Dr. Stein Ware, right? Dr. Kildare, calling Dr. Stein Ware. She was that alternative. They don't acknowledge it. So in this article, can Nevada Dems beat the odds? And by the way, speaking of, don't forget, click like, click subscribe. Need your help, need your support. That's the way we go forward. Republicans. Okay, thanks, Ari. Yeah, Google Republican. I'll have to, or spell check. I'll have to look that up. Republican. Maybe Republican, right? For our Secretary of State killer there, Anthony Blinken. So Nevada, can Nevada Dems beat the odds? So I looked it up. Well, what did they say? All right, they mentioned in that article, can Nevada Dems beat the odds? What are they saying about Jill Stein? And there again, the premise is, the assumption is we have to defeat Trump. We have to vote for Harris, or in this case, it would have been Biden because Harris hadn't yet been tapped, anointed to take on Trump. But they're going through and they're saying, hey, we could lose. It's frightening, it's hand-wringing. We could lose, which should not be in the least bit an occasion for dismay, for sadness. It's good if the Democrats lose. It's not good if the Republicans win, but there's nothing that we should be particularly dismayed if the Democrats lose, because they're so bad too. We want both to lose. We want the Republicans to lose. And that should be the nation's position in any event. But it isn't. So they're worried. Look at that. President Biden's support for Israel has spawned hashtags like hashtag Genocide Joe and pledges to vote for Jill Stein or refusal to cast a ballot off. So instead of saying, it's really interesting, look at this. Instead of the nation saying, well, President Biden's unwavering support for Israel has rendered him an unacceptable presidential candidate. We must now look at alternatives like Jill Stein, Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Stein. We've got to look for something else because clearly Biden is not an acceptable choice. But they don't take that position. They're upset not that Biden is pro-genocide per se, not that the position alone, that policy is so evil, so immoral, so cruel that he has no business being president. That's not their concern. Their concern is, well, he might lose because of it. It's not okay. That's not progressive. Again, that's a grift. That's where you align yourself with the Democratic Party. And you're not an honest broker. You're not calling balls and strikes. It's not acceptable. Here's the worst. This is, they hired this Joan Walsh, who's always been a conservative, a corporate M, going way back. She's famous for her, hey, Bernie Sanders bros, get off my lawn, right? She's all angry about them apparently serenading her with pro-Bernie stuff. She's a huge Hillary supporter, likewise for Harris. So here she calls Jill Stein an opportunist, more interested in herself than the country's perilous future, which again is quite ironic because the policies that are embraced by the Democratic president are putting our future, all of our future, in grave peril. And you got to wonder. She's an insider. She's kind of part of the Democratic elite establishment. What is she getting out of it? Because it's such a clearly counterintuitive position. If you are progressive, that you would support Biden, that you would make an argument a year out that you can't take on the Democratic establishment that's responsible for, at that point, complete support for the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. So here's one more from The Nation, because not every headline has been wrong, misguided. This is from November, over a year ago. Ahmed Moore, who is a contributor, writes quite a bit for them. I can no longer justify voting for Joe Biden. Exactly right. Biden's unequivocal support for Israeli war crimes has destroyed that argument for him. And Moore mentions Stein in that article. He says he voted for her in 2016. That's the last article Ahmed Moore wrote, has written since, where he mentions Jill Stein. He does have some other articles. He condemns the ongoing genocide by the United States and Israel, but he doesn't, after November 1 of 23, call to support any other candidate other than Jill Stein, other than Kamala Harris. He doesn't say you should vote for Harris, but he doesn't say you shouldn't either. So The Nation, and I've got to believe that they told him more, or maybe they just didn't publish his piece. If he wrote a piece that said you got to vote for Jill Stein, they didn't publish it. Maybe he just saw the handwriting on the wall. The Nation isn't prepared. Jacobin Mag, these are supposed to be leftist media legacy media institutions, they cannot take on the Democrat Party. To me, that's a grift. To me, that's a failure to report and opine without fear or favor. Instead, they're taking your money under the pretense, the premise that they're going to give you a true progressive perspective. And yet, they're not. And yet, they're keeping from you the full extent of the Democratic complicity in genocide and ecocide, in worker right suppression and the like. It's horrible. Horrific. I went after Our Revolution yesterday. I want to just talk a little bit about Progressive Democrats of America. And I mentioned that Our Revolution, the leadership there won't come on my program. PDA also, they'll have nothing to do with me. I think it's very disappointing. I think these are conversations we should have. This was an email I got from them. Of course, I don't think one thing I'll say for PDA, there's some things I want to say that I like about PDA. They send me informative stuff. It's not all about money for them. My understanding is they spend a lot less money on staff. Their salaries are lower, and yet they are able to have group calls and organize at least as much as Our Revolution. So I give them credit for that. But in terms of the actual policies, they're no better. So you can see this was the email, and what jumped out at me from this was stop. Is Hal sounding like a demon on anyone else's end? So, nameless name, I will tell you, I was testing my audio, and I hope it sounds good. I thought it sounded good. I'm not sure what the problem would be. Ari, how do I sound, since I can see you're there too in the group chat? And I'll listen after the program. But there might have been a little bit of maybe echo or muffle, but not much. 240-242-5646. I bet it's on your end. I'm not really sure. And let me see. I'm not getting... If you're trying to call, which I don't think anyone is, although there was a call Monday that I didn't get, and I'm sorry about that. But you can also post in the chat, and if you call, I'll at least know you're calling, and I'll look to see if you try. Stop Tulsi's confirmation. Wow, they don't like Tulsi. That seems to be a big issue. I can't view any attempt to, any focus on Tulsi Gabbard as somebody who needs to be kept out of the Trump cabinet. I can't view that as anything but a bit of a grift. If you're a progressive, if you're against the mic, if you're against endless war, Tulsi ain't perfect. Not saying she is, but she's a lot better than anybody else we could expect for National Intelligence Director, including nominated by a Democrat. So for PDA to promote some kind of Stop Tulsi campaign is really, really wrong-headed. It's misguided. I'm going to say I consider that to be a grift. And here's the actual, by the way, they're sort of glomming onto another group called Hollywood Dems. So I think this actually comes from Hollywood Dems, but it's the link they provide. So certainly PDA deserves censure for this, in my opinion. Trump's pick, Tulsi Gabbard, regularly parrots Russian propaganda. Yeah, she doesn't want an endless war with Russia. She doesn't want us sending landmines to Ukraine. She doesn't want us sending missiles into Moscow. She doesn't want a nuclear war. She wants peace. She wants people not to die. You want to call that Russian propaganda? Be my guess. She doesn't say Kiev should have a Russian flag flying over it. She's never said that. But this is the way these faux aggressive grift type organizations operate. They terrify you. They raise the bloody specter of Russia, which she consumes, isn't this terrible? She apparently consumes Russian propaganda daily. Wow, I would think that's something you would be glad that your DNI, your Director of National Intelligence, would consume. She should know what is in the media of countries all around the world, including Russia. That's a really important thing to know, to do. That's a positive. But they recast it. They spin it as though it's something negative. She blames the U.S. for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Yes, we provoked Russia in many ways. That doesn't, and she doesn't only blame the U.S., but she recognizes that Biden-Harris policy was incredibly provocative. It was threatening, understandably threatening to Russia, which, by the way, is exactly the same position that Henry Kissinger took, Bloody Henry took before he died. Don't go into Ukraine. NATO, stay out of Ukraine. That's why we're fighting there now. She disputes established U.S. intelligence indicating. So think about that. There was U.S. intelligence that indicated, didn't prove it, right? This was back in the 2011, 2013 reports that Assad had gassed his own people. And there were a lot of doubts about that. There was a lot of skepticism. I won't go over all the details. It's never been conclusively determined. There was, I believe, a UN report that was not based on complete information, and the UN ultimately pulled back and was equivocal with regard to that particular incident and whether Assad was responsible. Sound same demon as ever. Thank you, Ari. So I guess I'm sounding okay. That's good. So really, there's nothing there against Tulsi that would justify pulling her, but voting against her. And the attack on Tulsi from PDA or from Hollywood Dems. So I guess, is it Rob Reiner? I mean, there's somebody that we really want to be that we really need to be aligned with. She might be compromised. Remember, the New York Times said that despite all the efforts to find a link between her and Russia, there's none. They couldn't find any. She has the same. She just has a pro-peace view. She wants peace with Russia. Well, you know what? So do I. And I would think so would PDA. There are members of our conference who think she's a Russian asset. Why wouldn't he want? And then they just assume, right, in this effort to get people to call to defeat Tulsi. It's absurd. So I was like, okay, I'll write a letter. I'll use their resources. But my letter wasn't what they would have liked. And I think we need to do this. These kind of guerrilla efforts, right? Anything to kind of throw monkey wrenches into these institutions that claim to speak for leftists, that claim to be progressive, but most certainly aren't, that are pro-war, anti-populist, anti-people. So my email to my senators was support the nomination of Tulsi Gabbard. And I'll be honest, I may have overstated it because I'm so pissed off at these faux-aggressive, again, grifter-type groups who don't call balls and strikes, who align with the Democratic Party. And the first sentence there, totally true. Tulsi has demonstrated consistent and sincere patriotism over decades in public service. That's beyond peradventure. There's no question. Any efforts to claim that she's somehow compromised by some sort of money or being associated with some sort of corrupt group has been completely failed. She is a powerful voice that recognizes the malignity. Is that the right word? I'm not sure. Malign nature, shall we say, of the neocon pro-war Dick Cheney, Fred Kagan, Hillary Clinton, Victoria Nuland consensus. Absolutely. And that's exactly what we need in this time of genocide and endless war. She has a welcome independence from the weapons manufacturers and their lobbyists, unlike, of course, Antony Blinken, and they have done incalculable harm to our nation and our planet since the Iraq War supporter. Yeah, I don't think this is really even really that controversial. It's only controversial because there's been a malignity. Let me look it up. Is there such a word? It's a noun. Persistent and intense desire to cause harm to others. Okay, I used it right. Good for me. It's only controversial because of the consistent effort by, actually started with Hillary Clinton, who was so angry, so upset that Tulsi said, I'm not going to work for you. I don't want to support you. I don't want to be part of a DNC that's clearly in the tank for you when Bernie's a better candidate. And that just really rankled it. Yeah. And she sicked her Clinton dogs on poor Tulsi. So these are all groups. You look at them and you're like, man, what's the matter with these people? How can we support them? And that would be, PDA, at this point, AOC. She's not fighting for you. It's that simple. She's raising a ton of money off of you, but she's not fighting for progressive causes. The Nation, Jacobin, how sad. I would so love for there to be some legacy media out there that was truly progressive, that recognized it's the Republican Party that's the problem, but it's not there. All right, I managed, I still got a little bit of time left, so I had meant to talk about this, well, actually as early as Monday, but of course with Arlen didn't have the time, and then yesterday we got into it with the whole conversation about the our revolution and Joseph Gevorgis and all that. I saw this post on a Facebook Friends page over the weekend. This relates, of course, to the killing of Brian Thompson, I believe the name of CEO of United Healthcare. And so one of the poster was, we're not laughing at they're gleeful, right? This has been the reaction, is just remarkable happiness, joy at the comeuppance of somebody whose life work has been to deny people needed care. So this poster is, I believe, somebody who lives in my area in Montgomery County, which is an affluent suburban county, and there are pockets of poverty. Trust me, there are people who work very hard and make very little in Montgomery County, but the friends of this poster aren't really in that group, and they didn't take kindly to this. They're much more likely to be rubbing elbows with a Brian Thompson or a high-level healthcare executive than they are with people whose lives are about to be ruined or have been ruined or may be ruined by the denial of healthcare. They actually may be a lot closer to that outcome than they think, but still, they know people who work for Cigna. Maybe they had some claims from Blue Cross Blue Shield and they were paid. And for them, the deductibles and the copays aren't that bad. So they may not love for-profit health insurance companies, but we don't want to see people killed. We're better than that. We're not like that. We're better kind of people than that. So the response from one of the posters was not a fan of vigilantism. So this is basically the same people that we've been talking about all day on this program. There are people who are like, yeah, we can criticize the Democrat Party. Kamala shouldn't be, hanging out with Dick Cheney, or his daughter. But still, they're a lot better than Trump. So the attitude is, yeah, we don't like these healthcare executives. They're bad. They do harm, but we don't want to kill them. That would be really bad, right? So just a failure to understand just how harmful, how wrong-headed, how destructive these groups, institutions, individuals are, whether it's the Democratic Party or for-profit healthcare. So, just sort of snide dismissal. Not a fan of vigilantism. So I wrote, well, okay, you don't want to take matters into your own hands. So how do you propose we make change? If you're going to say no to vigilantism, what would you say yes to? So the answer is not, here's my answer, but not by murdering executives. I can't imagine that's your answer. My answer is whatever works, honestly. At this point, I mean, yeah, I don't want to see murders, of course. But that's why I'm asking you, because that's not what I want. But I do want something that works, and I don't have a good answer. My answer was vote for Jill Stein, which nobody did. My answer was vote for Bernie in 2020 and 2016, which not enough people did. So I'm asking you, what's your answer? I expect the next 4 years to have major setbacks, to put it mildly. But I hope that after that, real progress will be made to eliminate the profits in healthcare. We need new laws and regulations. So my plan, this is the biggest laugh riot, is to support Democrats. Why would you have any hope? We just saw the Democratic Party kibosh, loyal foot soldier, sheepdogger, AOC for not being corporate enough. So why would you have any hope, any optimism? To be fair, that happened after this colloquy. It's just irrational. It's just, you want to believe. I want to believe the Democrats are on my side. I want so badly to believe it. I don't care what you show me, Hal. I don't care what evidence you present. It doesn't matter. I'm never going to believe they're that bad. I'm never going to accept what you have to say about them. I want so badly to believe it's true that they're good people and they care about me. That's the mindset. And it's just wrong. It's just terribly, terribly, terribly misguided. And as long as you have that mindset, we can't change things. We can't make things better. I wish it were different. I do. I wish I had an answer. I wish I could say this is what we need to do, and we'll be able to do it. And I can say that. I did say it. We needed to vote for Jill Stein, for Stein Ware. Paging Dr. Stein Ware. But people don't do it. That's my answer. So I wrote when she said, or they said, I don't know, I shouldn't say she, I don't even know if it was a she. They said, my answer is to support Democrats. I get that you're dead set against violence being used in an attempt to force essential change. But the Democrats, whom you support as the preferred answer, are themselves fully complicit. In other words, they're not gonna change in the crime of for-profit healthcare. Given this, I don't see how you can condemn Mangione, because you don't have an answer other than what Mangione did. That's fair. You don't need to understand my feelings, nor I yours. Now, I found that very dismissive, because I understand their feelings. I truly do. So I found that to be pretty irritating. I get your feelings. The feeling is you don't like people getting murdered. But if that's your feeling, how do you propose we stop it? How do you propose we stop people getting shot in the streets of Manhattan? Because presumably you also think denying health care is you embrace that feeling too, that that's wrong, that that's immoral. So, yeah, that was a real frustrating response. And I just want to point one thing else out. And I will actually, because they're a public figure. So they have a comment on Facebook that I will respond to. And again, it's Montgomery County. So Linda Foley is a Democratic Assembly member, House Assembly in Maryland. And her response was the same as the other person's. I don't believe in killing people. And I wrote, okay, then use all your power and put all your efforts into passing Healthy Maryland. Call out corrupt Dems and demand that for-profit healthcare be replaced with far more just, efficient, and humane single payer. If you have a little bit of power, if you're elected to an assembly, to a legislative body, then you can do something. You can be a champion of the people. What AOC, she pretended that she said she would. Maybe she wasn't pretending. But in the end, she's betrayed the very people she claimed to be representing when she first ran. She claimed she would represent. That's your Democratic Party. It's not just fraudulent in terms of its presentation as a pro-people party, as a pro-life party. It's not only fraudulent, but it actually corrupts and changes its actual people. It's those who are elected under its aegis. If you don't want to be part of that grift, you got to support an alternative, an emerging party, emerging candidates, those who are not beholden to this cancer, this republicratic cancer. I'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we have friend of the program, Chuck Pinocchio, joining us. He is a tireless advocate for single-payer health care, and he has been a believer in the Democratic Party as a change agent. So he and I have a different view on this. I want to really explore this with him, and we'll do our best to try to get to the bottom of ways that we can make things better.